We'd now like to start EU-Japan Subnational Climate Action Workshop, exchanges between cities in Europe and Japan, opportunities for a resilient future. First, we are to hear from Mayor Yamanaka as a mayor of the whole city. He'll be giving a welcome speech.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Takeharu Yamanaka, Mayor of Yokohama. Let me give you my speech in Japanese first, followed by English one. Okay? すいません、通訳さん、これ多分言ってなかったと思うんですけど、この順序で。
Maybe the interpreter were not informed, but I'll change the language.
皆様、こんにちは。
Hello to all. I'm Yamanaka Takeharu, the mayor of the city. It is a great honor to welcome all of you to Yokohama for the EU-Japan Subnational Climate Action Workshop, exchanges between cities in Europe and Japan, as mayor of the whole city. I'd like to express my appreciation to Ambassador Hake, State Minister Yagi, the IGES, and everyone who has made today's workshop possible. About 2 weeks ago, I had the privilege of being the only leader from Asia to make a speech in a conference hosted by the Vatican, which gathered global leaders, including a mayor of Paris, to have a discussion. Through the discussion, the opportunity renewed my resolve that cities must take the lead in addressing climate change. And I'm confident that today's workshop will be an important step for cities in Japan and Europe to come together as a driving force for decarbonization. I hope that this is going to be a great opportunity for mutual learning.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is a great honor to welcome all of you to Yokohama. Thank you for joining in the EU-Japan Subnational Climate Action Workshop between cities in Europe and Japan. Allow me to express my deep gratitude to Your Excellency Ambassador Pake, State Minister Yagi, and IGES, and everyone who has made today's event possible. 2 weeks ago, I had the privilege of being the only one from Asian countries to make a speech in a conference hosted by Vatican with Pope Francis, which gathered global leaders like mayors of Paris and mayors of London, governors of California State, etc., to discuss about climate change action. This opportunity renewed my determination that cities must take the lead in addressing climate change action. I'm quite confident that today's workshop will be an important step for cities in Japan and Europe to come together as a driving force for decarbonization. I hope that today's workshop can be a wonderful opportunity for all of us to learn each other. Thank you.
山中市長どうもありがとうございました。
Thank you very much, Mayor Yamanaka. From now on, we would like to move on to opening and keynote speeches. The first and foremost, I would like to invite His Excellency Ambassador Jane Erika Pake, Delegation of the European Union to Japan. Ambassador Pake.
Thank you very much, Konnichiwa minasan. Thank you very much for this invitation. Mayor Yamanaka, this is a real privilege to be in Yokohama today. for this event co-organized indeed with the European Union delegation here in Japan, which is teaming up with the Institute, IGES, now for several years to indeed support local authorities, prefectures, cities, supported by the Ministry of the Environment, by Minister Yagi and his colleagues, in deploying indeed their agenda for change, dealing with climate mitigation, increasingly, of course, dealing at the same time with climate adaptation, and in that, of course, dealing with environmental degradation. Mr. Mayor, you mentioned the event organized in the Vatican just a few weeks ago. I think this is yet another illustration that also spiritual leaders are now identifying climate change as a major threat for humanity and are putting actions to deal with that threat very high on their own spiritual agenda. And that makes only sense, because this is really about women and men and humanity continuing, being able, and not just here in Japan or in Europe, which are rich economies and societies which can, I think, largely adapt, but in other parts of the world which are less developed, allowing these societies also to continue to thrive on a planet which is increasingly under pressure of warming temperatures globally and the associated extreme weather events and droughts and other consequences of our lack of action on climate policy over the last 3 decades. Now, today's workshop is, of course, for the European Union, European Union member states, and EU institutions, a particularly important event, the third in a series, where we want indeed to exchange good practices between European cities. I'm very happy to have François Croquette from Paris here physically in Yokohama, but also colleagues from Frankfurt in Germany joining today's discussions on the European side to showcase what is happening in Europe. I mean, this is in Europe, as we all know, a key component of Europe's vision for the future. We have a particularly ambitious climate and environmental agenda. We called it in 2019 the European Green Deal. And it is an agenda which has delivered a very, very ambitious regulatory and legal framework which puts us on track, on a path to reduce emissions by 55% in 2030, and credibly start a discussion on reducing emissions by 90% in 2040, and of course then achieve climate neutrality. It's very ambitious in the sense that it doesn't just look at 2050, which of course is where we are all heading, and very much Japan as much as Europe, and that I think is so important. But we also have set, including in law, very specific intermediate targets, which then deploy themselves across all policy areas. So it's not just saying 55% and putting it in the European climate law, but from that, all public policies at EU and as a consequence at national and local level, be it in energy, of course, centrally, but also in transport, in waste management, increasingly also in agriculture, forestry, land use, are then changed, have been changed to a large extent to reflect that overall objective. We are today in Europe at a juncture. We will have elections in the next few days on the 6th and 9th of June, as maybe some of you know. There will be out of these elections a new European Parliament, a new European leadership. And indeed, the discussion in Europe right now is, yes, we are ambitious, but that's really complicated. And it is effectively very challenging. To change the way we have constructed our societies, developed our mobility, dealt with our security of supply on energy. All this is deeply affected by the perspective of these transformations in the next 10 and 15 years. And we are therefore in Europe at a moment where indeed we will move from setting the framework, which I don't think will change, into delivering and implementing it, accelerating, if you want, our transformation. This will be the challenge of the next political cycle in Europe. In that, cities play an absolutely central role. the reality of our societies is that overwhelmingly in Japan, in Europe, but worldwide, we live in cities. And so the transformation will happen territorially, but also institutionally, largely within the remit of city authorities. And I think it is fair to say that both here in Japan, certainly in Europe, with the Global Covenant of Mayors, certainly worldwide, cities are absolutely clear on that responsibility. And that's really, I think, a very positive point in the entire climate policy process. Cities are, as is the nation state or regional level policy making as the European Union one, equally, of course, confronted with the twin tensions of society expecting change. In Europe, no doubt our societies are climate anxious and realize that we need to change deeply. I think they also largely see that the climate agenda is an agenda for quality of life, for sustainability, for beauty, very often as well in our cities. So there is a much larger agenda on which to build. But at the same time, and I suppose François will mention it and other colleagues as well, this is not a walk in the park at all. Because changing the way we are moving around our cities, we are shopping in our cities, we are heating our cities or cooling them in summer, this is something which affects each and every one of us. So the change agenda is not just about deploying investments in technology, it's also very much about bringing everyone with us in that change journey. And therefore ownership of the population in cities, of our citizens, is of course the first critical step, the key step in ensuring that this change management process, if I can call it like this, is indeed successful and relevant. And I finish by just sharing, because it will also be discussed today, the experience of the 100 European climate neutral cities, which was launched in 2021, where the European Union asked European cities, would you like to be part of an ambitious plan where you decide on your climate neutrality not by 2050, not by 2040, but already in 2030? And we asked cities, who is interested to join? And we were, in fact, absolutely overwhelmed with the number of cities which wanted to be part of that process. More than 250 cities put themselves forward, of which 100 were retained. And these 100 cities are now putting in place even more ambitious plans to move to neutrality by 2030. With a degree of offsetting, and I think that is of course necessary given the time frame, but nevertheless very ambitious plans. And at the heart of these action plans is indeed the work with citizens to ensure that it is not just the administration or the industries which propose or prepare and roll out a plan, but this is really designed with the needs of communities and citizens in that city, the ones which will benefit, but also which will have to share the burden of change with decision makers. And that's really what is at the heart of this European mission around the 100 climate neutral cities. I don't think all of them will completely get there in 6 years, but that's not the point. The point is to accelerate, to learn, and with that, to then bring many more cities in Europe and maybe here in Japan as well on this ambitious change agenda, which is the one which our world so badly needs. So congratulations to all of you. You are doing an amazing work, and I think Paris is one really great example. There are many more in Europe, and there are also, I know, several here in Japan, and I'm much looking forward to the discussions, learning also from Yokohama and many other Japanese cities. So again, thank you very much for hosting us, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Minister, for being here as well, and looking forward to a very fruitful afternoon. Arigatou gozaimasu.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Let's now turn to State Minister Yagi Tetsuya of the Environment. Once again, good afternoon. I am the State Minister of the Environment, Yagi Tetsuya. Thank you for the invite to the EU-Japan Sustainable Subnational Climate Action Workshop. I would like to thank and express my appreciation to the Delegation of European Union to Japan, the IGES, and the City of Yokohama. On behalf of the Ministry of the Environment, I would like to make a remark. Between Japan and the EU, in May 2021, at the 27th Japan-EU Summit, the launch of the Japan-EU Green Alliance was announced. Particularly, the subnational is recognized as one of the key themes of the Alliance's activities. At the high-level dialogue on climate change between Japan and the EU, held on April 30th this year, it was agreed to deepen a cooperation on urban and regional climate change measures through the exchange of views. To achieve the global target of 1.5 degrees Celsius, it is essential to achieve early and substantial reduction in greenhouse gas emissions and peak out the emission by 2025. In particular, climate actions in cities, which are said to account for 70% of total emissions, are becoming increasingly important. The Ministry of the Environment, together with International Institute for Applied System Analysis, ISA, will work on joint research on cities' transformation and will also contribute to the preparation of the IPCC special report on cities. Now, the world's leading cities are committing to net zero, and by actively working on decarbonization, attracting people and capital, the race to decarbonization is truly on now. Decarbonization is a growth opportunity for the regions. It is important to utilize local resources such as renewable energy, nature, and tourism resource as much as possible to encourage intra-regional investment, leading to the simultaneous resolution of local social issues and regional revitalization. In that sense, the active exchange and mutual learning about decarbonization between EU and Japanese cities that are actively working towards decarbonization is an important and timely event. The workshop will be an opportunity to share knowledge and best practices from Japan's decarbonization leading areas, as well as valuable experiences from EU cities to realize a global decarbonization domino effect. In closing, I sincerely hope that this workshop will deepen exchanges among cities and will be a fruitful meeting for all participants. Through this opportunity, what we have been giving importance to in Japan is the word kizuna, or bund, or tie. There are participants from many different cities and countries, and I hope that the kizuna will be deepened through the opportunity so that we can work together toward decarbonization. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, State Minister Yagi. Now, we'd like to move on to keynote speeches. The keynote speeches will be given by Yokohama City and then 3 cities from the EU. We will receive 4 messages in total. So at the beginning, I'd like to invite Dr. Takeharu Yamanaka, Mayor of the City of Yokohama City. Over to you, Mayor Yamanaka.
Okay, let me start. Hello, everyone. It is a great honor to share the initiatives of our city, Yokohama, which is the largest city, largest municipality in Japan. My message today is very simple. Citizen empowerment and city government's convening power, these two are essential. Firstly, let me give you an example of how Yokohama is successful in empowering nearly 4 million citizens. Between 2001 and 10, our city succeeded in reducing household waste by 43%, nearly half, by almost half, despite the population growth at that time. This tremendous reduction of waste, followed by, of course, the reduction of CO2, was achieved by applying new waste separation rule, as shown on the right. So why we succeeded in applying this complex way of separation? The solution was partnering with citizen empowerment. In our city, neighborhood volunteer clubs, which is 自治会町内会 in Japanese. Volunteer clubs are very active to improve their communities. For example, they engage in voluntary activities for each residential area, such as safety patrol for kids, daily cleaning of streets and parks, etc. There are more than 2,800 neighborhood volunteer clubs in our city, and we understand the city is supported on volunteer club basis substantially. The neighborhood clubs are also very active for waste management. The neighborhood clubs are also a pivotal driving force for waste management. In fact, the volunteer clubs are well motivated and they participate in cleaning and managing of surprisingly 75,000 waste collection points over the city. 75,000 waste collection points. They are managed by volunteer clubs. City government, on the other hand, hosted 15,000 workshops for residents on how to separate household waste in collaboration with volunteer clubs. So the combination of the community power and the government passion enabled the behavioral change of residents, resulting in reducing waste by almost half. So currently, we have introduced more detailed separation of plastic waste in order to increase plastic product recycling. This new way of separation will contribute to 15% CO2 decrease from plastic incineration by next year. We are now reducing CO2 from plastic product quickly by borrowing citizen empowerment again. I believe that empowering citizens is the key to the societal transformation with behavioral change toward carbon neutrality. Next, let's take a look at how city government is working with business sectors. Firstly, let me show you our initiatives on the center of Yokohama, where we are now, Minato Mirai 21 area, abbreviated as MM21 district. The MM21 district is a cluster of large companies with about 200 hectares and 130,000 working population with 80 million annual visitors. Notably, it accounts for 10% of business sector's energy consumption in the city, 10% of business sectors. We are now expecting 100% decarbonization, complete decarbonization of this district in the upcoming 5 years by working very aggressively with the business sector. In 5 years, this district is going to be a unique model in the world on how we decarbonize the urban area. But this is a selected good story. The reality is we have to tackle on SMEs, small and medium enterprises. Well, this is a reality. 70% of carbon emissions come from businesses in Yokohama, and 99% of businesses is SMEs. But 60% of them is still not doing climate change action. This is the reality. This is because SMEs are challenged by their limited expertise, by limited funding source for decarbonization. So there is urgent need to boost a large number of SMEs to action. This is the reality. I think not only in Yokohama, but also in cities all over the world. So here is where the city government steps in. The current fraction of SMEs with climate change action remains at 40%, like I said. We are boosting this fraction to 60% in 2 years. This corresponds to 20% increase in 2 years, which needs 14,000 companies in the city, okay? So we are now dispatching city officers to SMEs in order to provide city-involved support. The menu of the city-involved support is, firstly, we publicize registered companies. Secondly, prioritize them in city biddings. Thirdly, provide energy diagnosis followed by detailed consultation. And finally, provide CAPEX subsidy for capital investment for decarbonization. Through sure and steady efforts like this, we are seeking to have most SMEs joining the climate change action by year 2027. Well, I believe city government has convening power to bring SMEs together to go green. Okay, lastly, let me talk about partnering with Asian cities. For over 10 years, Yokohama has established a partnership with Asian cities. For example, we are supporting them to formulate climate change action plans. Also, environmental technologies are being introduced in those cities. As just one example of our support, let me show you the case of Mandaue in Metro Cebu, Philippines. Final waste disposal has been a significant challenge for Mandaue City. Yokohama has continuously provided expertise that helped Mandaue to increase waste separation and plastic recycling. As a result, annual waste was reduced by over 4,500 tons in year 2023, enabling around 3,000 ton decrease in carbon emissions. After these initiatives in Asia, last November, representatives from 44 cities and governmental organizations across Asia gathered in Yokohama. Mayors, governors, city officers from Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, etc. gathered in Yokohama and issued Yokohama Declaration toward carbon neutrality. Okay, so following this declaration, Yokohama and Bangkok will host a climate change workshop in Bangkok next month. We will continue to lead Asia on the way to net zero carbon society. Okay. Okay. So we will host international exhibition called Green Expo in year 2027. This expo is going to focus on green innovation, biodiversity, and so on. So that's why we call it Green Expo. So this is, this exposition, this exhibition is going to be, showcase, how we realize net zero society, biodiversity, and so on. I believe that this exposition, this exhibition is going to be a unique opportunity in the world from Japan, from Yokohama, to let the world know about how precious the carbon neutrality is going to be. Okay, okay. This is. I think this is going to be. This is the final slide. Okay. Okay. This is the last slide. Today I talked about partnering with the cities, importance of the partnering with citizens, partnering with our, the importance of partnering with, our businesses, and finally, our explained about our initiatives, about partnering with Asian cities. Thank you for your attention.
Thank
Thank you very much, Mayor Yamanaka. So now I'd like to turn to Francois Croquet, Director of Ecological Transition and Climate from City of Paris. He'll be talking about the climate and the urban policy of the Paris.
Thank you very much. Dear Mayor Yamanaka, dear Minister Yagi, Monsieur l'Ambassadeur, cher Jean-Éric Paquet, dear colleagues from European and Japanese cities, with a special nod to my friend Grégory Doucet, the Mayor of the City of Lyon in France, dear friends from IGES, Thank you very much for inviting the City of Paris to take part in this workshop. On behalf of Mayor Anne Hidalgo, I'd like to congratulate the City of Yokohama for its leadership on subnational climate action. We are very proud in Paris of the close relationship we have enjoyed over the years with our colleagues in Yokohama. Now, this afternoon, I've been asked to put Paris climate and urban policies in focus. So I'll try and explain the bioclimatic revolution that we are experiencing in Paris. Revolution, that's quite a commitment, you might say. Now, we do love our revolutions in Paris, and they all started in City Hall, as Mayor Hidalgo likes to remind us. But why do we need a revolution? Because the temperature in Paris has risen by 2.3 degrees Celsius since 1876. And we know this thanks to the data provided by the observatory that we've got in Montsouris. And so that's the most accurate picture you can get of climate change in a city like Paris. And you've all realized that that is already beyond the Paris Agreement commitment. And if we don't act, IPCC reports show us that we are heading for a 4-degree rise by 2085. So, to put it bluntly, here is our challenge. Will Paris meet the Paris Agreement goals? And if Paris can't make it, how about other European or Japanese cities who face the same challenges? So, we do need a revolution. When do we need it? Now. Paris is a dense and mineral city with only 8.6 square meters of green spaces open to the public per inhabitant, when the World Health Organization standard is 10. So the urban heat islands are making things worse. And again, science, the IPCC's latest report, have warned us that we could very well experience heat domes with temperatures peaking at 50 degrees, just like it happened a few years ago in Vancouver in Canada. That's the cover of the French newspaper Libération, and it was based on this report, and it made a feature about an experience that we made in crisis management. What happens when temperatures rise to 45, 50 degrees? This is the kind of challenge we have to face. So, with this in mind, let me try and share our action plan. In 2024 alone, in Paris, we will vote on a new climate action plan, a bioclimatic local urban plan, and a revised resilience strategy. By combining these three documents and strategies, we hope to make a difference. The Paris Climate Action Plan for 2024 to 2030 will declare the general mobilization. First, to make sure Paris remains a livable city. As I said, when it's 50 degrees outside, you can't breathe. Second, to protect its inhabitants from natural disasters caused by climate change. We know there will be more floods, there will be more heat waves, there will be more incidents. And last but not least, to achieve carbon neutrality. As you will see on the next slide, we've made some progress. Here it is. Paris carbon footprint has decreased from 28.3 million tons of equivalent of carbon dioxide in 2004 to 18.5 in 2021. So that's a 35% reduction. The good news is we're on track, but still, that is not good enough. because the hardest part is ahead of us. So we have decided to use urban planning in support of the Climate Action Plan. And to achieve this, we are relying on people-centered solutions. Citizen empowerment, like Mayor Yamanaka said. This is the Yokohama way, this is the Parisian way. 20,000 people contributed to the debate online and in town hall meetings, and they came up with 50,000 proposals, which led to some bold new urban planning rules. I'll just name a few. Promoting the end of building demolition and the reuse of material wherever possible, limiting the use of concrete and promoting biosourced material, generating renewable energy from each new project over 1,000 square meters inside Paris, creating 30 hectares of green spaces, including a massive new park of 15 hectares in the northeastern part of Paris, where we lack trees and greenery, and 100 green streets, especially those streets where there are schools. We call them les rues aux écoles, and they've made a big difference in improving the security for families, but also in bringing down temperatures in those streets. There are other rules. Some of them have created quite a debate. We've decided to create 80 new logistical sites, including along the river, to allow boats plus bikes to deliver goods in Paris. We've also decided to ban dark stores and to tax SUVs from outside Paris, as well as those parking in Paris. So as I said, there is no time to lose. Reducing the carbon footprint will be key, but mitigation is a big part of the equation. Ahead of the Paris 24 Olympics, you all have heard about Mayor Hidalgo's decision to reclaim the River Seine and to achieve open water swimming in the river in 2025. That is to say, there will be a sports event during the Olympics, but citizens will be allowed to swim in the river if everything goes according to plan next year in the summer. And that is quite an achievement. We've come a long way, and there are now 30 species of fish living in the river instead of only 2 in the 80s. So we're quite confident we're going to make it. And if there's one thing I'd like to share with you today, it is that there is no turning back. The same with the transport issue. We had this debate a few years ago, and when Mayor Hidalgo decided to reclaim the riverbanks, there was an outcry, there were law disputes, but we won, and there are now more than 300 kilometers of bike lanes inside Paris, and thanks to the Olympics, there will be 130-kilometer new lanes before 2026. So this is all about speeding up, making things happen as fast as possible. If I'm looking at our priorities, protecting the Parisians, as I said, first and foremost. Mitigation efforts, I've talked about mobility. There's a huge issue about retrofitting homes. There's also the issue of food, and I'll come back to that. Preserving resources as common goods. That is being sober in the use of water, energy, materials, protecting biodiversity, promoting a local sustainable economy working with small businesses, and acting together for the climate, again, because it all comes down to citizen empowerment. Now, there are some major challenges remaining, and I should mention them as well, because we know this is not going to be an easy path. Airline transport, and I'll come back to the slide on the Paris carbon footprint. You can see it remains the first contributing factor to our carbon footprint, with 4.2 million tons in 2019. And I'm afraid I've just made it worse by flying to Yokohama. But I'll have to use our brand new co-op for offsetting carbon to make up for this. By the way, Paris is one of the few cities that has decided to include air transport in its carbon footprint estimate. Now, if you look at the slide, the second post for the carbon footprint is about buildings. If you add together the residential, the tertiary, and the construction and materials, you end up with roughly 4 million tons for construction and heating. Like I said, we have to retrofit 1 million buildings in 30 years. That is huge, and that is a huge investment. We all need to come together, the city, the metropolitan area, the government, the European Union, if we're going to make this happen. Finally, we'll not be able to reach zero local emissions if we don't have our energy consumption and reach 100% renewable energy, with a specific effort on low-income households. We do believe this is the path to a fairer and more inclusive city. And let me finish by just saying, and I think this is something we all share in this room and online, that when it comes to climate change, cities are obviously a part of the problem. They can and they should be a part of the solution. We are looking forward to sharing our experience in the framework of this workshop with European and Japanese cities. And again, on behalf of the City of Paris and of its mayor, I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Francis Croquet. Next is a video message. This year, 2024, they mark the 65th anniversary of a sister city partnership with the Yokohama City. We have a video message from Mr. Gregory Duse, Mayor of Lyon.
Your Excellency, Mr. Paquet, dear colleagues from all over the world and Europe fighting against climate change, dear friends, it's a pleasure and a real honor for me as Mayor of Lyon to be able to speak at this major conference. I'm sorry not to be able to join you in person, but I would like to warmly thank the delegation of the European Union to Japan, the Institute for Global Environmental Strategies, the City of Yokohama, and its mayor, Takeharu-san, for inviting me to speak on video on this special day. It marks another significant stage in the progress of our shared project and our shared history. Dear Takeharu-san, you made us the great pleasure to come visit Lyon last October, and your visit helped strengthen even more the 65 years relationship between our two cities. Thank you again. For those of you who have not yet had the pleasure to visit our city, Lyon is France's second largest urban area with a rich history dating back more than 2,000 years before the Romans, with more than 500,000 inhabitants, 300,000 homes, and nearly 70,000 businesses. We are a thriving city with a strong industry and a unique gastronomy renowned all over the world. But alas, we are also very affected by global warming as Yokohama. If we are all gathered here today, it's because all of us agree on the seriousness of climate change. It's an obvious fact, validated, proven, and ratified. Its causes are well identified: human activity and the use of fossil fuels. If you are here today, it's because you know, as well as we do, that acting now, forcefully and resolutely, together, right now, is the answer to a vital emergency for people here and everywhere on the planet. Human activities are responsible for the climate change observed on a global scale in recent decades. Lyon is no exception. Lyon's climate has already changed, impacting the daily lives of its residents, particularly the most vulnerable. Climate scenarios to 2070 applied to Lyon predict that temperatures will be similar to those in North Africa if nothing is done between now and then. Taking action for the climate requires us to adapt our lifestyles, to question our relationship with living beings and within our planetary limits, our mode of social organization, and our public policies. On a city scale, drastically reducing greenhouse gas emissions means reinventing new ways of living together, imagining and realizing a more sober future. Cities must also adapt to extreme heat, dry soil, and the potential acceleration of extreme weather events. To meet this climate challenge, in 2022, the city set itself the most ambitious target ever to achieve climate neutrality by 2030, in response to the European Union call for projects 100 climate neutral and smart cities by 2030, the so-called Cities Mission. The City of Lyon is already committed to reducing greenhouse gas emissions with a set of public policies, such as, for instance, an exemplary public investment and purchasing policy, with the adoption of a scheme to promote socially and ecologically responsible purchasing, the construction of urban parks and the planting of trees, the development of sustainable mobility by making the city walkable, promoting cycling and public transports. But the municipality's emissions represent only 5% of the territory's emission. We just cannot act on our own if we want to reach carbon neutrality. Only a collective and massive mobilization and cooperation between all local stakeholders will make it possible to reach this objective. This is why the City Council has launched the Lyon 2030 Inspiring Change initiative, with its Agora 2030 comprised of local stakeholders. The Lyon 2030 initiative aims to collectively find local answers to the climate challenge. The Agora started early 2023 with 60 partners from the opera to public hospitals, from public universities to business schools, from local associations to companies and the Chamber of Commerce. 1 year later, more than 100 partners have joined the movement. And we are very grateful that all these efforts are starting to be noticed. Since your last visit in October, dear Takeharu-san, we were very proud to be chosen last January as one of the European cities to join the Net Zero Cities EU program. Lyon will become one of the 26 pilot cities acting as an innovation hub as we test solutions for rapid decarbonization. There is still a great deal of work to be done altogether. Every action, every wake-up call is a step forward. The challenge is complex and the urgency of the situation calls for swift actions. Today, we have the chance to build a brighter, a greener future, and I can't wait to know more about all your ideas. Merci to all of you.
大変力強いメッセージをいただきました。どう
Thank
もあ
you
り
very
が
much
とう
for
ご
a
ざい
very
ました
powerful message.
では最後のスピーカー
Now we turn to our final speaker,
最後のスピーカーはオンラインでご参加
who is participating online,
ミカエル・ホストマン
Michael Hostman. He's the Vice Mayor of City of Frankfurt.
Vice Mayor Hostman, are you ready? So thank you very
The
much.
Ambassador
For yours.
Pake, dear State Minister of Environment Yagi, dear Mayor Yamanaka, dear Director Croquette, distinguished guest participants. First, I would like to convey the greetings of the whole magistrate, the governing board of the city of Frankfurt am Main, especially of our mayor, Mike Joseph. It is a particular honor and pleasure for me to participate in the opening of the EU Subnational Climate Action Workshop today. I thank you for this opportunity. I'm very happy that our partner, City Yokohama, is host to this event, and it seems like a natural choice since Yokohama has been engaged in the issue of climate change for a long time, started the way to become a sustainable city many decades ago. Frankfurt am Main and Yokohama have been twins since 2011. The city partnership between Frankfurt and Yokohama is very active and focuses on climate protection, among other things. Just last year, the mayors of Yokohama and Frankfurt signed a city partnership agreement extension, agreeing on further cities-to-city cooperations that include more citizen exchange, fostering the next generation, and mutually cooperating for the success of Green Expo 2027 in Yokohama. Many measures have been implemented in Frankfurt since the introduction of the Master Plan 100% Climate Protection and the Master Plan Protection in 2012. Essentially, the Master Plan envisages a 50% reduction in energy consumption and the generation of the other 50% from renewable energies. This objective was at first supposed to be achieved in 2050, but the Stadtverordnetenversammlung, the City Council of Frankfurt am Main, decided 2 years ago that climate neutrality should be achieved in 2035. The Earth and the humans are running out of time to fight climate change. It was already pointed out, nearly 60% of the world's population are living in the cities, and the cities account for 70% of global carbon emission. As Ambassador Paquet already pointed out, these cities have a major role to change our world to the better. Our goal must be to make cities around the world sustainable. We have to stop jeopardizing future generations. In this context, two things are crucial. On the one hand, cooperation and exchange of knowledge and experience around the world, especially city-to-city cooperations in climate action. And today's and tomorrow's workshop is a good example for that. On the other hand, creating a holistic culture of change within our cities, including all stakeholders. The most important stakeholders are citizens themselves. We as cities have to inform and involve our inhabitants in problems of their environment and their city. Citizen participation is an effective governance tool for finding sustainable solutions, using their knowledge, creativity, and initiative to match the local and regional context. Citizen participation methods can foster a strong and transparent democratic process. And at that same time, the cities are benefiting not only by finding innovative, sustainable solutions, but by gaining more and stronger support for the implementation of new ideas. I'm looking forward learning more about the experience Yokohama is making with, for example, Yokohama's SDG Design Center to find integrated solutions for environmental and economic and social issues by connecting the needs and seeds of diverse entities and the in and outside the city of Yokohama. I'm looking forward to learn more about the experience Lyon is making with its Ambassadeur du Changement program to support ecological and solidarity-based transition. And of course, let me add this, Paris, Monsieur Croquette, is always an inspiring city. This leads back to the topic in international exchange. International or city-to-city cooperation is of high importance, in particular when it comes to climate change. We have to learn from each other. We have to develop common strategies, and we have to share results, because we could achieve the goals only together. And I'm very happy that we have such strong partners like Yokohama and Lyon in our network of city partnerships. For example, Well, one of the most successful implemented common project with our Japanese partner city was the EU-supported project as part of the European Union's International Urban Cooperation Program. The aim of the program was to exchange experience and develop a joint action plan for climate protection. Several reciprocal visits and with project presentations took place between 2017 and 2019. At the same time, Yokohama and Frankfurt organized events as part of Earth Hour and took part in the WWF project Japanese Traveling 60 Panda, which concluded in June 2019 with the development of a joint action plan to reduce greenhouse gases. We therefore are looking forward to new projects of exchange and cooperation. Thank you again for the invitation. All the best and a successful conference with fruitful discussions. Vielen Dank. Thank you so much.
ホストマン副市長どうもありがとうございました。
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor Mr. Hosman. We were hoping to have a Q&A session, but we are pressed for time, so we'd like to conclude this opening and keynote speech session. Thank you very much to all the speakers. Now, let's move on to the next session entitled Progress of the EU and Japan Initiative to Accelerate Climate Action at Local and Regional Level. Mr. Togo Uchida, Executive Director of ICLEI Japan, will be moderating the session. Over to you, Mr. Uchida. Well, thank you very much for your kind introduction. I am Uchida, Executive Director of ICLEI Japan. So I will be conducting the next session in English, so I will be seated. Thank you for your understanding, and then the language will be in English, so please prepare your translation devices.
Okay, so distinguished guests and participants, welcome to the session Progress of the EU and Japan Initiative to Accelerate Climate Action at Local and Regional Level. My name is Togo Uchida, and I'm the Executive Director of ICLEI Japan. And ICLEI is a network of leading subnational local governments around the world pursuing sustainability. Here in Japan, we have 26 top leading local governments representing over 33% of the national population, actively engaged in ICLEI's operation as a member. Co-organizer of today's meeting, Yokohama City is an active ICLEI member, and I am proud and grateful for Mayor Yamanaka taking his position as a board of ICLEI Japan. As stated by His Excellency Ambassador and also State Minister in the previous session, both countries, or the EU and Japan, recognize the importance of local and multi-level climate action to achieve zero carbon. This trend is reflected in the outcome documents of the recent G7 meetings and in the discussions and initiatives coming out from UNFCCC COP. Distinguished guests and participants, a recent study found that summer of 2023 was the Northern Hemisphere's hottest in 2,000 years, with an increase of 2.07 degrees Celsius, warmer than the average summer temperature of the pre-industrial age. COP28, which happened last year, was significant from the perspective that the international community showed their willingness and commitment to solve these problems, but we are running out of time. As the world is gearing up to actions and concrete outcomes, we would like to hear from both EU and from Japan the progress of the EU and Japan's initiative to accelerate climate action at local and regional level. With this, we have two speakers representing EU and Japan for this session. We have Philippe Froissart, Head of Unit, Strategy, Policy Coordination, Urban Transitions, Clean Planet Directorate, DG Research and Innovation, European Commission, who is participating online. Thank you very much. It's early morning still in Brussels. Thank you very much for participating. And we also have Izumi Tomoyuki, Deputy Director, Regional Decarbonization Project Division, Minister Secretariat, Ministry of Environment of Japan, also participating. So thank you very much. And to begin the session, I would like to ask both participants to present the progress of their initiatives involving local and subnational governments. And then we will have a Q&A session to go a little bit deep dive into understanding what is happening in both EU and Japan. So without further ado, I would like to ask Philippe Frosawa, to share us the progress you have been seeing in Europe. So please, the floor is yours.
I have an echo actually, but okay, I will. First of all, thank you very much to say a few words about the mission on climate neutral smart city. I'm in a good position here because I listened with attention to the presentations that were made by the City of Yokohama for me in the session, and many of them refer to the Commission. So if I can have the next slide. Right. The mission was announced as part of the Europe in 2019. It's one of the 5 missions, the framework program for the It has actually 2 objectives. The first objective is to have 100 cities in Europe that will become climate neutral by the horizon of 2050. And the second objective is to use these cities as pioneering hub so that all cities will actually become climate neutral by the horizon of 2050, thereby fulfilling of the European Green Deal as a climate neutral continent. So when you say that we have 100 cities, I'm saying the truth exactly. 112 cities participating in the mission. We have actually 12 cities coming from associated countries. As you can see from this slide, cities coming from Turkey and countries participating in the mission as well. You can see from that slide a good representation of cities from all across the States. We have cities coming from other countries, and we can say confidently that mission will have an impact. Because when you look at the number of citizens that are impacted by this, and that are in 112 cities, 12% of the. So if we deliver, made a good impact towards reaching climate by 2030 and 2050 for the rest of the country. I should say that.
Excuse me, sorry, Mr. Furusawa. Can you? Is it possible for you to speak a little bit close to the microphone because
okay.
We are hearing you, but maybe it's cutting off every now and then. So if it's
all
possible.
right, my apologies.
Yeah, sorry to intervene. Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
So you can continue. Yes, please.
Thank you. Maybe I should mention here that you heard from the city of Paris and Lyon, and you can see that now participating actively in the city's mission. I should say Lyon has actually been awarded the mission label at the beginning of this year, since they have completed climate neutrality and reviewed positively. In order to avoid some misunderstanding, thought which is listed by is actually not participating to the mission as they have reviewed their target to 2035, previous speaker, but they are in place very closely involved in this strategy for decarbonization. If I can have the next slide. How do we go about? So we ask cities that are participating in the mission to develop what we call the climate city contract. This climate city contract has three components: a commitment part, where the stakeholders that are involved in this strategy commit to the objective of the mission. That means local authorities, but that would involve as well the regional authorities, the national authorities, public and private stakeholders. For instance, companies that are located in cities usually do commit to the objective of the mission and are directly involved in the rolling out strategy for climate neutrality. The second component, that action plan, where you list by sector the areas that decarbonated, and it gives you an idea of the location of those cities that are involved. And the third component, which is the most important one, which is something that cities have used to develop in this context, is the investment plan. Identify investments that are required for those cities to reduce gas emissions in the different sectors that they have identified. So in order to help cities develop these climate city contracts, put in place a number of tools, instruments, starting with what we call the mission platform, which is run by a consortium called Net Zero Cities, which was mentioned by earlier on in the session. The mission platform has the objective of providing technical support to the cities in order to help them develop. In addition to that, we have a number of programs that provide support through projects and training activities in order to help the experience and good practices between the cities that are participating in the mission. And in addition to work on the platform, we have a number of research actions. Let's not forget that the missions are part of the framework of research innovation, which are also there to help identify the best innovative solutions that can be implemented in order to reach their objective. If I can have the next slide. So where are we now? Where do we stand as regards the implementation of the mission? As I say to you, the whole process started in 2019, but most of the work started with in 2021. And since 2021, we have seen that quite a number of cities that are participating in the mission have developed successfully their climate city contracts. We have a first wave that received the mission label last year in October. 10 of them from countries in Europe received the label. And then we have the second wave of mission labels being awarded at the beginning of this year in March. As I said, I mentioned the case of Lyon, which received the label, but you can see here on the slide the cities that were awarded with the mission label. Now, viewing the climate city contracts of another batch, 22 cities, and we are confident that by the end of this year, all the cities that are involved in the mission will have submitted their climate city. So by the beginning of next year, by the middle of next year, we'll be moving from a situation where cities have been preparing strategies for climate neutrality to a situation whereby they are implementing for climate neutrality. So that means in practice, the type of support that we are providing change a lot. Technical assistance for preparing a strategy, technical assistance as identify, for instance, investment, and we are providing more and more now support for financial advisory services, so that can have the necessary investment for implementing their investment plan in particular. Next slide, please. So I mentioned the mission plan. And, you can see on this slide the different partners that are participating in the platform. There are quite many of them. Clay, I should mention, one of the active members of the mission. And success of the mission has a lot to do with the involvement of the different actors and the services and activities that are being provided by the people. I do invite you to the website of the mission platform, where you will find that there is a lot of information, a lot of documents that are available, that are made at the disposal of the people that are participating in the mission. Just to give you an idea, an example of the type of information that you will find. We have more than 200 fact sheets on solutions that have been developed in the research innovation projects that are given to cities in different sectors, on transport, on energy efficiency, on waste management, and so on, which are there for cities find the solutions to tackle the issues that they face in their own city. Next slide, please. So this is, I mentioned a number of the activities and documents that you can find on the mission platform. So I would say now our challenge is the investment. And when we looked and we analyzed the plans that were provided to us by the cities that have prepared their climate contracts, we made an estimate of how much investment would be required for those cities to become climate neutral. And our estimate is 650 billion euros to reach that objective. It goes without saying, we will not be able to find these investments from programs such as Horizon Europe, neither through other programs that we manage at the Commission. So we need commitment of the national authorities, we need the commitment of the private sector, and you will see in the next slide that we have been working actively with the member states on identifying ways of finding the necessary resources for the objective of climate neutrality. Next slide. So as I said, we have been with the member states. You can see from this slide the initiative that we launched, which is called Capacities. We have now setting up 15 national networks to support the ambition of the climate neutral smart city mission. You have here the countries that are participating, and we'll have a second one that will be provided to the national network, so that all countries in the mission will eventually have international networks. These networks are important as they give us the possibility to reach to national funding and increase as well the impact of the mission, because we go well beyond the cities that are participating directly in the mission. Next slide. Now I would like to learn about another initiative which is of interest to all, which is the Urban Transition Initiative. To a large extent, initiative, which is part of mission innovation, is the international outreach, the climate neutral we have been launching in Europe. And I'd like to say a few words of this initiative, as it could be of interest to Japanese cities. Next slide. So the challenge is very clear and well known to you. Most of the greenhouse gas emissions are emitted in cities in the world. And at the end of the day, if we want at a global level to have an impact on the greenhouse gases, we tackle this challenge with cities. And not enough to do it in one continent, like we are doing it in Europe. We have to do it on a global scale in all continents and all across the world. So an initiative like which is a global initiative, the perfect setup to launch a mission which is targeting a transition. And that's what we did. And if I can have the next slide, you can see the participants that are active in its initiative. Next slide, please. Can I have the next slide, please? As co-lead the urban transition mission, we have the global. The Commission is participating directly, as well as it's called JPI Urban Europe. We have a number of members, which are members of the Delegation, such as Austria, India, Spain, Saudi Arabia, Sweden. And of course, we are very open to increase the number of core members to the urban transition mission. And I would be very happy to see Japan taking a closer involvement and more committed to this initiative in the foreseeable future. But in addition to the core members that we have also a number of international organizations that are participating in the mission. Play again is a prominent actor in the mission. And I should point out that in addition to those organizations, we have now a very active participation of the private sector. So you see, for instance, KPMG, Google, T-Systems are companies that are active in the urban transition mission. And they provide technical assistance and services to cities that are participating in this initiative. Next slide, please. So the goal of the urban transition mission is to work with a cohort of cities worldwide to demonstrate that integrated pathways towards holistic, centered urban transition, build around clean energy, cities are possible at global scale. So we have a number of tools and activities in the urban transition mission that are addressed to the cities that are participating, which range from actions, capacity building, training, exchange of and good practices. Next slide. We have now across the world, 40 different countries that are participating in the transition mission. I'm very happy to say that Tokorozawa in Japan is one of the countries that is participating in the transition mission. And we are very much interested in having more cities from Japan participating in this initiative. I'd like to point out to you that the call for expression of interest that we have for cities to join in the urban transition mission is open in 2024. So you have the link on this slide, and if you are interested, please join us. There are just two requirements that we put to as eligibility condition, which is that the city should be a member of the global players, but the list is in the global covenant very large. Okay. And we have a minimum requirement regarding the number of inhabitants, which is 50,000 inhabitants. But these are the only requirements that we have for the city to join in the mission. Next slide, please. And I believe I wanted to say from my side, I would like to thank you again for giving me the opportunity to give you an update on what we're doing on the city and to flag this international initiative we have on the urban transition. And my apologies.
Thank you very much, Mr. Philippe Flossard. Thank you very much, and and apologize for the noise, but I think we were able to hear you clearly in the end. It was very encouraging to hear that your cities in Europe has been now moving into not a strategy making, but more of a implementation stage. And also, we were able to hear and understand EU's activities to share information and knowledge through mission platform, and also beyond selected cities you are also approaching to make sure that there will be an effect of scaling up even after the leading cities would achieve zero carbon by 2030. And also, of course, the urban transition mission, you mentioned about Tokorozawa being the member from Japan. My understanding, Tokorozawa will present tomorrow's session, so it will be very nice to hear from them tomorrow. And yes, it will be very nice to see more Japanese cities joining the urban transition mission in the near future. So thank you very much for your presentation. We will come back to the Q&A sessions later on, so please stay online. Thank you very much. So now I would like to ask Izumi-san from Ministry of Environment of Japan to share the progress in Japan. So Izumi-san, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. This is Izumi of Environmental Ministry. Can you hear me okay? Yes, we can. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. I am Izumi, and I am supporting decarbonization activities of local areas and communities. So today I will be giving a presentation titled Decarbonization Leading Areas. The next page, please. So before talking about the leading areas in terms of decarbonization, I would like to share with you the overall picture of measures and policies or regional decarbonization roadmap. So in 2022, this roadmap was established. And in this roadmap, for the next 5 years, actively policies will be mobilized, and then active support will be provided in the areas of human, technical information, and financial resources. There are two pillars here. The first one is something that I will be discussing mainly today. We will create at least 100 decarbonization leading areas by 2030. And then the second pillar is that we will implement priority measures all over the country, such as self-consumption, solar power, energy-efficient housing, electric vehicles, etc. So we would like to implement all these policies by 2030, and then we will expand the model across the country and achieve decarbonization before 2050. This is called decarbonization domino effects, and without waiting for 2050, we'd like to realize decarbonization. The next slide, please. Now, what is decarbonization leading area? This slide explains that we will choose the decarbonization leading areas by FY 2025. The second bullet goes that we set out the direction of initiatives for decarbonization in various regions, and we will improve the quality of our life, and then simultaneously we will solve regional issues or decarbonization issue. What is the definition of a decarbonization leading area, which is written on the left-hand side of this slide? There is household, and also office, and then local governments, offices. There is a CO2 emissions in association with the power consumption, and we should realize this goal by 2050, but we'd like to bring it forward by 2030, and in these local areas, we will try to achieve these targets by 2030. And first and foremost, we will reduce energy consumption, and then as for the remaining areas, we will try to reduce the usage of power. So we will select local areas which can realize that, and so far we've gone through 4 rounds of selections. The next page, please. These are the selected leading areas overlaid on Japanese map. There are 47 prefectures in Japan, and apart from 11 prefectures, there are areas in the remaining prefectures, 74 municipalities. The next page, please. From this page on, I am introducing some case studies. So in the interest of time, I would like to introduce just 2. As was explained in the first part of my presentation, for the decarbonization leading areas, not only do they work on decarbonization efforts, they will try to resolve regional challenges at the same time. That is one of the criteria that we have for the selection. The reason being is that these decarbonization areas will introduce renewables and so on with the taxpayers' money, subsidies, but even after 2030, when the subsidies are gone, so that they can autonomously introduce renewables, otherwise it's not possible for us to spread decarbonization domino. So in that sense, regional issues and local issues have to be simultaneously resolved so that initiatives can make a progress going forward. In that sense, as you can see on the right-hand side, there is decarbonization leading area example from Kumamoto Prefecture. They made some proposals and we adopted them. Over here, there is a famous semiconductor company which came in, and there is a power shortage, and also there is demand for renewables. And that is a current issue faced by this municipality. And then there are some supply chain businesses, and including SMEs. They are wanting to use renewables, which is an issue for this particular local community. So near the airport, there is an industry hub, solar power, and biomass power generation will be introduced, and such businesses will receive the supply of power from such sources, and they will establish a local power company so that solar power produced near the industry hub will be delivered to the residential areas. The next page, please. On the left-hand side, this is an example from Hokkaido. This one is a town that is active in livestock raising, and then their manure disposal is a challenge. Through the process, there is a methane gas generated and can be used for power generation, and it can decarbonize buildings, residential areas, and so on.
So like this, decarbonization and the regional issue are both to be tackled under the project supported by this scheme. And please go to the slide, one after another. The other one. Another one. Yes. Selecting those areas alone are not enough to achieve zero emission by 2030. So we've been following up on those areas. So last year, we publicized the results of the follow-up analysis. So out of about 70 municipalities, we followed up on about half of them, and this is a summary or the overall assessment of the follow-up. And there are noteworthy cases, outstanding cases, but at the same time, several challenges were identified. Please go to the next slide. So this shows outstanding examples. So there are cases where establishing a project implementation system went well. And also, there are cases where they were successful in expanding the users for the renewable energy. And also, third category of the success, interregional cooperation. There are cases where there are good interregional cooperation. So the core cities are actually driving renewable energy transition in adjacent municipalities in those cases. And also, there are other cases with the establishment of supply chain for woody biomass. So they are recognized as outstanding cases. And then there also are issues identified. So one set of the challenges are issues related to grid interconnection. In some cases, it takes time, longer time than expected to get connected to the grid. And in some cases, there are a smaller connected capacity than expected. And as regard these issues related to the location of renewable energy generation facilities, in some cases, in a case, they were not able to locate those facilities to the location where they planned to do so. And also, there are issues related to the unique business environment of remote islands. There are unique challenges faced by such areas. And lastly, issues related to the project implementation system. In small municipalities, there are a limited number of the officials. So how to run this kind of large-scale project itself can be a challenge for different areas. So there are different cases. So municipality environment ministry is to work together with those municipalities so that we can create a effective model cases toward 2030. And next slide. So there are other municipalities which did not apply to become a DLA, but there are what we are hoping is that the other municipalities which are not taking part in the decarbonization leading areas are to learn from those cases. And for that purpose, we categorize the DLAs selected. And one of the categorization is from the nature of the region, like the usage of the biomass or woody biomass is one of the characteristics of the one of the category. And also, a second group of the DLAs are the ones working on creation of foundation for local decarbonization. Some of them are working with a regional financial institution. Some of them have established a local power company. And also there are different perspectives to categorize those areas. For example, from the viewpoint of utilization of local resources, both in demand and supply sides. With those categorization, we're hoping that the other municipalities are also to follow the suit. Next slide, please. So this shows how Ministry of Environment is supporting the municipalities. So today, I am explaining decarbonization leading areas, which is applicable to the top layer in this slide. So when it comes to DLA, we're not talking about like a top of the top municipalities, but there are other municipalities which are facing with more and more challenges. Some municipalities are lacking human resources, so we help them with the human resource development and such. And also, the support are being provided to planning. And another example is our support menu to provide a support for municipalities for implementing renewable energy. And another example is a priority measures acceleration projects. This is to provide support for large implementation of the facility by municipality. And also there is a model business. So there's a systems of support menu. So depend on the needs of the municipalities, our ministry is providing support. Next slide, please. So other ministries other than MOEs are providing various supports toward decarbonization. So some municipalities may face difficulty choosing those support menu. So as a Ministry of Environment, we prepared a support tool to make it easy for municipalities to pick appropriate support menu for them. So this is serving as a dictionary of the support menu for municipalities. That concludes my presentation. So with those tools that I presented today, we're aiming to support municipalities throughout Japan. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Izumi-san, for your presentation. So just same as EU, In Japan, the first step is to develop the overall strategy and then to provide support to leading municipalities. But also, there are other schemes and framework to support municipalities which are not necessarily leading municipalities, and in meeting different requirements of different municipalities, the government is providing overall support so that the decarbonization can be proceeded. Thank you very much for explanation.
Both participants, I would like to move on to Q&A session. We have around 15 minutes, so I prepared a few questions for the two speakers to answer. I would like to first ask Mr. Furuhasa-san. So we have heard the progress of cities and how national governments and EU are also collaborating to achieve zero carbon together. And I would like to first congratulate you and also Japanese government in taking leadership and making a huge progress, and both at the national and local government level. On the other hand, as I mentioned in the beginning of this session, the challenge is how do we scale up? And of course, you have also shared us your strategy on trying to scale up, as well as the Japanese cases of both governments thinking about how we could scale up these activities for the whole society to achieve zero carbon. And we are seeing more cases where cities are working in partnership with private companies, and we are also seeing many cases where cities are actively collaborating with other cities. And we are also seeing many innovative financial approaches as well. With all these interesting new approaches which is coming up, what kind of approaches you would like to introduce us as a necessary actions to further increase the momentum and implementation of local decarbonization in the future? So please also share us a little bit more of a concrete example as well, your thoughts on this. Furuhasa-san, please.
Thank you, and I hope you can hear me better now than before.
Yes.
Good. So if you want, I can start my presentation all over again. I'm just kidding, of course. No, to answer your question, and I have to say I was very interested in following the presentation of the previous speaker, because despite the fact that we are living in different parts of the world, we face the same challenges. And the two challenges that you mentioned and that we have is about replicability and scaling up. And it's about identifying investments from the public and the private sector. So I mentioned in my presentation the importance that we put in the mission platform that we have set up in Europe, which is there precisely to allow replicability. It's actually quite tough because every project that is being developed in a given city is not necessarily easily replicable to another city. We have to take into account the local conditions, and we cannot just transpose one solution to another from one city to another. That means we need to provide technical assistance and support to the cities that are involved in this process. So concretely, that means it being close to the cities that go through this process and maintain this type of assistance to them. That means very concrete actions in order to help them identify the boundary conditions, identify the financing model that they need to put in place. And as I said, when it comes to unlocking investments from public and private funding, now this is our key issue. In the mission. We moved, as I said, from the stage whereby we were planning, we were developing a strategy, to a situation where we are implementing that strategy. So the key issue is investment. So we are working very closely with financial institutions in Europe, and particularly the European Investment Bank, with which we have allocated specific resources to help cities in giving to them financial advisory services so that they can have access to resources and investment. We are launching in June this year what we call the Capital Hub, which will have also as a target to help cities identify the investment that they need to have in order to roll out the solutions that they have identified for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. I think one of the issues we have also is to go beyond the group of cities that we have, which are these 112 cities. And that means having more initiatives for sharing experience and good practices. We have put in place, as I said before, a program of pilot project, which is very much liked by the cities because it helps them identify local solutions to the problems that they have. But we also have put in place a twinning program where we can broaden up the scope of the cities that are participating in the mission. And this is something that we are committed to do as we move towards more and more the second objective that we have for the mission, which is going beyond the 112 cities and reaching out to a much larger group of cities. Having said that, when it comes to the private investment, we have changed a little bit our message when we present the mission now. What we said when we launched the mission and until recently was the mission is good for the environment, good for the citizens, it's good for the cities because of all the co-benefits that are addressed or are met when fulfilling this objective on health and so on. And now we are more and more saying it's also good for business. That means that these are business opportunities that we have identified in those cities for companies that have the expertise, the know-how, and then they can, for instance, deliver on those solutions that are expected by the city. So we are moving our message more and more towards the companies, the industry that we have in Europe, so as to show to them that participating, contributing to the mission is also good for them and good for their competitiveness.
Thank you very much. I think the essence is all about involving everyone, and finance is, of course, a very key element to make this happen. Thank you very much for sharing that progress and your experience. 泉さん、ありがとうございます。今同じ質問。
Thank you very much, Izumi-san, Mr. Izumi. I'd like to ask us the same question to you. In your presentation, you explained that a scale-up and also decarbonization domino has to be realized, and to this end, it's necessary for you to engage many local municipalities, and also you have to have an autonomy in the municipalities. Mr. Furusawa will explain that there are so many actors who are being engaged in this endeavor. And what is the situation in Japan based upon the discussions we've just so far? Could you share with us Japan's situation? Well, thank you very much. Yes, as was explained by Philip-san, the private sector power has to be unlocked. Otherwise, it's difficult to realize the decarbonization. So in the DLA's initiative, cooperation with businesses is a prerequisite. It is a must. By doing so, the local power companies and energy businesses and companies with a know-how can be engaged, and they can introduce their know-how to realize decarbonization, and this is necessary. As for the future activities, of course, we will be relying on private sector. At the same time, basic municipalities will be making efforts, but there are some areas that are difficult to be covered by them. Then a wider local governments, such as the prefectures, also have to be engaged. And how to engage them is another topic that I'd like to explore going forward. So these are DLAs, decarbonization leading areas, as well as some priority projects that are making headway. In this situation, what sort of foundation should we put in place? For example, we can leverage local energy companies like this. PPA can be useful in this kind of context. We are getting all these insights. Some menus or programs, if you like, can be independent. Others have to be supported. We are identifying all these points, and now we are building relations with various local governments and municipalities. So going forward, it will be possible for us to design system and increase efficiency. These are the areas where I try to make efforts. So the key point is that now you don't know what success looks like, but you still have to move forward. So MOE, Ministry of Environment, is deploying all sorts of schemes to build relations with players, identifying challenges, and going forward, you'd like to resolve all the challenges, and I understand the discussions are underway. Thank you very much.
Since we have around 6 more minutes, I would like to ask one more question to both of you. So this question is slightly from a different angle. So when we look at the international negotiation of climate change, the COP28 concluded the outcome of the global stocktake. And now with this information, all the countries around the world is now revising the NDCs, and we are expected to see the revised version of NDCs coming out later this year or beginning of next year. Especially during the COP28, there was an initiative called CHAMP was launched, which calls upon the national governments to work together with the local governments in discussion of how to improve the NDCs with the collaboration with local and regional governments. So my question to you is there any particular activities you are currently doing, or is there any future plans of incorporating the actions on the ground, especially the experience that you accumulated through the city's actions, and how that to be reflected in this bigger goal of reduction of carbon dioxide? So if you could share your current progress, that would be appreciated. So from your perspective, Furusawa-san, please.
Yeah, thank you. I think what you're touching upon is a critical point, which is also the link and the interaction between the national authorities, the member states, in our case in Europe, and the local level. And that is a critical issue that we have in Europe, but I suppose all over the world as well, which is sometimes a disconnect between the ambition at national level and the strategy at national level when it comes to decarbonization and what we have at local level. And I have to be very honest with you, in some of our EU member states, there is not necessarily an alignment between the ambition that you may see in cities in Europe and their national authorities. So that's why we are working more and more at the national level. We want to get a closer commitment of the national authorities in this process. And as I mentioned, we have already 15 networks that are established in quite a number of EU member states. And our ambition is to go towards 27 national networks and really get the commitment of those national authorities so that they are in tune with what is being done at local level. You will find sometimes that are much more ambitious than what their national authorities are, and they are trying. And in our case in Europe, we have a number of programs and initiatives that are managed centrally in Brussels, like the Framework Program for Research Innovation. But we have also a number of other programs and initiatives that are managed directly by the member states, what we call the managing authorities. And these are the entities that we need to convince, and that's not always easy. So I think we have learned our lessons in the present multi-annual financial framework, and it goes without saying that as we go along in the next multi-annual financial framework, we will probably have a closer attention to the commitment and involvement of the national authorities and the member states in this process.
Thank you very much. 泉さん、これも同じ質問になります。
Thank you very much. Izumi-san, in essence, same question to you. So globally, well, GST Global Stocktake was done at last COP28, which told us that the further reduction is needed. And countries are in different situations, but the countries are now reviewing whether they can have more ambitious objectives or goals. And CHAMP as an initiative was launched at last COP28. And in this process of the national government working on their goal, currently the involvement of the local level is now more required to lead to more ambitious goal. And CHAMP was set up. The Japanese government and the European countries are supporting those initiatives. I know Ministry of Environment or the government of Japan is still in the process of a coordination or study, but as much as what you can say, as you are interacting with those leading areas or municipalities, how are the moves by the municipalities are impacting national government's activities, or what are its expectations? Thank you very much. There are strong correlationship between the local and the authority. And I said that the DLA are covering a private sector, and actually in Japan, much emissions are from private sector. So how much reduction can be there in that area? How much further reduction can be done is a key. And effectiveness of those activities at the local level are very important. And there are much mission relating to large number of households. So very detailed activities by municipalities are needed for reduction in those areas. So CHAMP initiative, I understand, is emerged from a similar situation faced by different countries. So with a strengthened support to municipalities, I believe that there will be a positive impact on the NDC as well. And once the NDC is developed, they need to be translated into municipalities' plans. And this is now required of the municipalities to make efforts. And I think that would help the alignment between the government and municipalities' activities. And I think this is the characteristics of Japan.
We have come to an end of this session. I think personally, I find it extremely interesting to know that the experience coming from EU and also from Japan, although the situation is rather different in many ways, a lot of the challenges are emerging, which is really, really similar. And I think the approach taken by EU and also Japan as a national government, also there's a lot of similarity. And I think there's still a very big room for us to learn from each other. And I really hope that this kind of occasion will continue in the future as well. So I would like for the participants and audience to give a huge round of applause to the both wonderful speakers, and that will be the close of the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for waiting. We'd like to start the next session, topic 1, energy efficiency and promotion of renewable energy at local level. We have 4 speakers. The moderator will be Ms. Gabrielle Wagner, team leader of EU Climate Dialogues, EU Cities project. Now over to you, Gabrielle-san.
Thank you very much. You can hear me well. Good afternoon, good morning. So I hope we have all energized a little bit during the break after the many contributions and inputs we have heard. So it's really my great pleasure to open this maybe a little bit more technical exchange on energy efficiency and the promotion of renewable energy at local level. So as introduced, I'm leading the EU Climate Dialogues project. That is an EU-funded project that is supporting the EU's bilateral relations with external partners in order to actually promote climate-related policies, ambitious climate policies, and the implementation of the Paris Agreement. And we are currently working in 19 countries through different means, but basically promoting the exchange of policy practices, know-how, and exchange of any kind of good mechanisms involving all kinds of stakeholder groups, so governmental, local stakeholder groups, business community, but also NGOs from the EU and from the partner countries. And it's really great to be here in person after last year's event that we had online. So I think it makes a big difference, even though we have not everyone here together with us. But I hope that the era of in-person meetings, despite the high carbon footprint, of course, of those events in faraway countries will increase. So we heard already from Philippe Froissart from the Commission, and we all know that cities consume globally 65% of the world energy, and they account for more than 70% of the global CO2 emissions. So it's clear fundamentally in such a workshop we have to address these topics. And we know that the energy demands, generally speaking globally, depending on the city level of course, are increasing with every passing year. So it's a key topic, and we also covered it to some extent last year. So here, we know that there is now, and we heard it again and again from different speakers this morning, there is really a great need to actually focus on the decarbonization of the energy systems at the very latest by 2050. And that's also why at the last COP28 in December, the EU launched actually, together with the UAE presidency, the so-called Global Pledge on Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. And that was to increase, double actually, I always have to look at this figure, doubling the rate of the global energy efficiency improvements by 2030 and to triple the installed capacity of renewable energy. So that's a huge ambition. The pledge until now has been signed by 133 countries, including, of course, Japan and the EU. So the role of cities in this transformation cannot be overemphasized. And I just want, before giving the floor to our speakers, give you our sort of recollection from across our portfolio and, of course, the current international debate that also has been reminded us by the different speakers from Yokohama, Paris, Lyon, Frankfurt, and the Japanese Minister of Environment. I think we need basically to focus on, let me just double check, 7 aspects. The first one is integrated energy planning has to be in line with long-term strategies and objectives. The second one, of course, evidently, is to improve energy efficiency through different measures. The third one is also pretty clear. It's to support a grid-connected renewable energy-based system that is still a major challenge, including in many European countries. The phasing out of fossil fuel and the fuel switch, I think we can hopefully cover today in this session. The allowing access to energy for all users and citizens. And then, of course, to promote a policy environment that we just heard in the previous session that makes the implementation at city level possible. And last but not least, to mobilize the private sector on access to finance. So I'm very happy that we have 4 cities now that can talk about their experiences and their measures on how to drive forward the decarbonization. So let me start first. The Director, Renewable Energy Promotion Division from the Green Growth Department of the City of Kitakyushu, please come in. It's refreshing, I think, that we have a change. Very well welcome. And maybe quickly to introduce you, but maybe you will also say that again. So for those who are not familiar with the city, like me, so it's located, if I understand it correctly, in the southern part of Japan. And this city has a very special history and evolution, and we are very keen to hear from you how, from, let's say, a very air-polluted city in the 1960s, you have moved forwards to actually get a very strong positioning with regards to renewable energy, in particularly with regards to offshore wind farms. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon to you all. I am from Kitakyushu City. My name is Murakami. Well, thank you very much for giving me this wonderful opportunity to participate in this excellent workshop. I am most honored about this invitation. So from my side, I would like to introduce renewable energy policy of our city, Kitakyushu City. First of all, I'd like to share with you the outline of Kitakyushu City. What sort of a city is this? So Kitakyushu, which basically means a northern part of Kyushu, and that's exactly where we are. And we are the number 2 city in Kyushu. As you can see in the map, if you see closely, it looks like a heart shape, so it's quite a cute shape. So this Kitakyushu city is a leading environmental city, a green city, and I'd like to share with you the footsteps of the city. In 1901, there was Nippon Steel Corporation that began operations back then, and ever since it's been evolving as a manufacturing city, or it had been. Having said that, across Japan, the situation is quite similar. During 1960s, there was a serious pollution problem such as air and water pollution, and during 1980s, citizens, universities, businesses, and government worked together to overcome pollution. In 2017, we received a special award of the first Japan SDGs award by the national government for the first time, and in the following year, 2018, we were selected by OECD as a model city for its model cities and regions for the SDGs program. For the first time in Asia, in 2018, we were selected as SDGs Future City for the first round of selection in Japan, and in 2020, as Mr. Izumi of MOE explained, we were chosen as a DLA. Decarbonization leading area. As such, we are a manufacturing city and a green or environmental city. We are a port city as well. There was a Nippon Seitetsu steelmaking company. You may know that there is a Toto and Yasukawa Electric Corporation located in our city, and as you can see, there are some images at the right top, and that was when we had intensive pollution. But now, back then, you could see that there were 7 colors in the sky, and then the sea is orange. So it was almost like the screw of a boat were being melted and so on, and the pollution level was so intense. But about such pollution, we worked hard together, and then we brought back rich sea as well as a blue sky, and we were successful in the endeavor. We also have a history of 130 years as a port city. Leveraging such features to realize carbon neutrality, we have been bringing ourselves to this challenge. Our goal is by 2050, we would like to achieve net zero greenhouse gas emissions in the city, just the same as the central government, and in 2030, we'd like to realize the reduction of 47%. For the entire Japan, we have a target of 46%, so our target exceeds the national target slightly. Now, to be more specific, towards 2030, what sort of measures are we taking? What sort of actions are we planning to take? There are 3. The first one is including renewables. We will be a hub city of decarbonization, and then the second one is that we will be a hydrogen supply and use-based city, and then the third one is that we will provide support for private sector to drive innovation. By combining all of them, we'd like to achieve our targets by 2030. We are making efforts to this end. Today's theme is renewables, so at the left top, we want to be a base city that promotes decarbonized electricity, and I'd like to talk about the details for this particular pillar. To be more specific, we'd like to introduce PV, EVs and storage batteries, and the third-party ownership of model, and expand the use of decarbonized electricity. We'd like to create industries to reuse and recycle PVs and storage battery, etc. Also, we are promoting the introduction of wind power and create a comprehensive base for wind power-related industries. To be more specific, what sort of actions are we taking? As I mentioned earlier, we were chosen as a DLA, decarbonizing a leading area. So, before 2050, by 2030, we would like to realize carbon neutrality in these leading areas. So we are ahead of others by 20 years. To be more specific, in Kitakyushu City, there are public facilities and so on, and for all the installable facilities, we would like to introduce some PV or solar panels. And there are two features. As you can see at the left bottom, the green area is our city, Kitakyushu City, and Kitakyushu City demonstrating a leadership, not only our city, but also involving smaller municipalities around us in cooperation with them. We'd like to make joint efforts. So there are 17 cities. As a whole, we are trying to introduce PV and solar panels for storage batteries, as well as for HVAC or air conditioning infrastructure. Smaller local governments cannot, for example, have a decarbonization section or team, or their resources are tight in terms of human resources. Having said that, smaller local governments have a lot of renewable potential, so this has to be leveraged. Kitakyushu City as an hub of this area, demonstrating a leadership, engaging all the surrounding municipalities by introducing the similar scheme. We'd like to introduce a solar panel. This is a leading effort. Another characteristic of Kitakyushu City is through third-party ownership model, we are advancing efforts. I believe that there are some people from different sectors, for example, solar panels and batteries, solar storage batteries and HVAC. If you want to purchase that and try to install it, you have to make a lot of upfront payment. You can only go on a step-by-step approach, but for example, roofs can be owned by power companies who can introduce solar panels, and then you try to recover the investment by selling power. By doing so, you don't have to make an upfront payment. So a large scale of facility can be introduced under the leadership of the local government. This can be applied not just for solar panels, but also for HVAC as well as storage batteries that we are promoting all these efforts using this model. The core of this model is a Kitakyushu Power PPS, a new power company in the local community. So renewables, solar power, biomass, as well as waste power generation can produce electricity or power, and such energy can be delivered to the city as retail power. So local businesses and citizens can receive such power, and these power companies are playing an important role. It is one and only new power company invested by the local government. So these companies are at the core, and then we are advancing our decarbonization efforts. Another point or initiative of Kitakyushu City is offshore wind farm. We are promoting this. 220,000 kilowatt maximum, 9.6 million megawatt times 25 units have been installed, and in March last year, the installation started, and next year power generation will begin. So Kitakyushu City, there are 440,000 households, and 170,000 households' needs can be covered by this offshore wind farm. So it accounts for about 40% of total power demand. So this is one of the largest wind farms in Japan. Not just a wind farm, but also as city policy, we are trying to develop a port infrastructure as well. This is happening in tandem. So we are trying to develop the port with the only offshore power wind infrastructure in Kyushu, and going forward, this industry will gain a lot of momentum, and especially we'd like to cover all the needs of western side of Japan. That's how we'd like to develop this port. So there are 4 functions that this port carries: installation base, production base, operation and maintenance base, as well as logistic base. These 4 functions are owned by this port, and we'd like to create a hub leveraging this port infrastructure. So we are trying to be a hub at the same time. We use all sorts of parts and components for offshore wind power, and we'd like to cover that needs by local supply chains of Japanese companies. By doing so, we'd like to develop local industry. So we'd like to create opportunities for local businesses to be in this space. And also, jacket that is in the middle, down below, that is the root part, and now this is under construction. And if you come to Kitakyushu City, you can see these large jackets next to each other, one after another. So do please come to Kitakyushu City to see this yourselves. So in regards to human resources, O&M will require a lot of human resources or talents. Last week, actually using the wind power facility, we set up a training center so it can provide training about sea survival, emergency care, firefighting, and so forth. So such training programs can be implemented in this training center. As for our future development and activities, offshore wind power is important. Not just a fixed type, but also floating type is very important for decarbonization. In Kitakyushu City, not only bottom fixed type, but also floating type is the type we want to work with as an industry hub. And at the same time, it's necessary for us to adapt to larger wind turbines, which is a global trend, so that we can be a port to deal with such large wind turbines we are making development. Also, earlier I talked about the O&M Center, which was recently launched, and we'd like to keep promoting this infrastructure. Kitakyushu City, or this is the same for the entire Japan, depopulation is a social issue. So younger people are leaving the city, which is a challenge that Kitakyushu City faces. So securing employment opportunities is important for us, just like for other local governments. So we would like to simultaneously resolve this city challenge, at the same time global challenge, global warming, and to simultaneously resolve both of them, we would like to introduce the renewables and promote the policy to this end. Well, thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Murakami. I think that was really a very inspiring, please have a seat, and interesting, wide-ranging run through the history and developments and also the future perspectives. We will come back to this. I would not like to take so much time so that we can have a bit more time for discussion. So I heard that the colleague from Valencia is now online, if that is correct. So I would like to invite Mr. Antonio Garcia Celda, from the European General Director from the European Green Capital Project 2024 Valencia City. Valencia is a city in Spain, and it has received the European Green Capital Award. You will hear about this. The city, generally speaking, has been known for its innovation-oriented approach to address climate challenges. And we are very eager and welcoming you, Mr. Garcia, to tell us more about it. The floor is yours. Can you hear me well and see me? Okay. Good, go ahead, please.
Well, thank you. First of all, thank you very much to all the audience for the organization for this opportunity. For us, it's very important because this is not a normal year for us. We are the lighthouse of Europe, telling or talking about the sustainability things, so sustainability policies. Our city is as you have said, is the European Green Capital in 2024. But this year, we not only are the European Green Capital as a city, we are the first Mediterranean European green capital in all the history. For us, for that, it's very important. We are the lighthouse of Europe as a green city, but we are the lighthouse of the Mediterranean cities, that we have a special characteristics that as a city, living close to the Mediterranean and living with the orchids close to us, give us the possibility to live with other kind of life. And we want to share, to demonstrate to the other cities that we can do different policies that maybe could be, or we could scale to other regions around the Europe and around the world. For that, it's very important this meeting for us because we can transmit the initiatives, the policies that we want to implement here during this year. And of course, now we are planting seeds that are actions, that are projects that will grow up for the next years, of course, too. If you can pass to the other slide, please. Yes, here you have a video that transmits more or less what kind of city we are and what kind of city we want to be.
I was put in charge of the project to recreate the Green Valencia filter using artificial intelligence. But even the most advanced technology can't understand some things. So I did the only thing I could, pack my bags. I traveled to Valencia to try to understand why artificial intelligence is incapable of capturing such a special shade of green. From the first minute, the experience was eye-opening. I suddenly realized that I wasn't just visiting and admiring those places, I was actually living them. I felt like I was part of it all. Each one of my senses came alive with every step, every second. I soon realized that in Valencia, nature and green spaces aren't just nice pictures seen through digital filters. They are part of the essence of this land and its people. Surprising flavors, rivers full of adventure, and bridges to magical places that reveal the ancient soul of this blessed spot on the Mediterranean. And then I knew, Green Valencia isn't merely a color, it's an emotion, and each person feels it in their own way. Maybe that's why it's impossible to capture, because it's actually Valencia itself which gets under your skin and fills you with excitement.
Well, this is the video. This is the reality that we want to transmit to all our citizens and above all to all the people that want to come to see Valencia, to enjoy Valencia and to live in Valencia, because usually Valencia is one of the top cities declared as one of the best places to live in around the world. And this is not it's not casual. This is because we are a city, more or less we are 800,000 inhabitants living in the city, but the metropolitan area that is close to us with the city are more or less 2 million of people. It's not a huge city, as you can imagine, but we have more or less all the things that we need, and we have a good relation with the green spaces and with the blue spaces too, no? With the Mediterranean Sea and with a big lake, the second biggest lake in Spain, that is close to the city. That is the name, it's called the Albufera. And for us, the green color of Valencia is this filter, that it's a mix between blue policies and green policies. And this color is the color of the actions that we want to implement, or we are implementing really during these years, but it starts previously, decades ago till now, and we will continue working in this line for the next years, of course. If you can go to the other slide. I will try to go fast to arrive for the actions that I think are the most important thing of the presentation. But I want explain a bit what is this European Green Capital Label and why we have it too. Okay, and this is really connected with the actions that we are implementing in the city. As I say, we are the lighthouse of Europe, talking about extraordinary things. This label recognizes the city's commitment to the sustainability and the efforts to improve our environment. Okay? That talks really about the quality of life citizens of Valencia have in our city. For us, it's an honor, this labor, but it's a responsibility too, a huge responsibility because we only we don't want to do all the things. We want to transmit to all the other cities that we can do, we can live talking and living with the sustainability ideas, with the sustainability projects and actions, and we want to scale and to help to the others to try to do it. If you can go to the next slide. Okay, for us as a city, all the European green labels to be a European green capital, the European Union that the entity that give this label to the cities. A lot of cities wanted to be green capital, but only one of the cities of Europe can be. Have to pass like an exam, an evaluation, okay? And this evaluation talks about 12 indicators that you can see in this slide, okay? We are talking about quality of life. We are talking about green aspects. And of course, we have to speak and they have to evaluate it to us about air quality, noise, water, sustainability in land use, circular economy, okay? These 12 indicators that you can see. And as I said, it's our responsibility to have a good city to pass this exam, but above all, we have this responsibility and to do the actions to improve our actual situation. Our actual situation of the city, as you can imagine, seeing the video, is quite good. Really is quite good. For example, we have the largest linear park in Europe. This is breaks the city with a green in a green area or with a green area. For us, it's very good. And as this action, we have a lot of actions that let us that in this moment our situation as a city is quite good. But we have to follow working in this line, and always we are seeing these 12 indicators. Well, in fact, now in Europe are resuming these 12 indicators in other 7 that are more global. And this gives us the possibility to see if our policies talking about the government of the city are good or not good. If we are implementing good actions or not, because the action is good, but is following this commitment with sustainability and seeing these 12 indicators. You can go to the other slide.
Mr. Gasset, just very quickly, can you hear me? Sorry, just in the interest of time, I know there is a lot of interesting input in this presentation, but I think we have to close the session relatively on time. So I just wanted to make sure we have 2 more speakers, that maybe you can go as quickly, as fast as possible
yes.
to the energy-related section, and then maybe there is, in the aftermath, time, for bilateral exchanges, if you allow me. Yeah,
well,
thanks.
I will say you then, hopefully. Well, we are dividing our actions, talking about green infrastructure and biodiversity public spaces is 4 areas that you can see. And for each of these, we have different actions. You can pass to the slides of the actions if you want, because the presentation, I suppose that the audience could receive it, okay? And you will see all the presentation after, okay? This is the resume of our quality of the city. Okay, we are surrounding for ORCAD. We have more than 7.5 meters per each Valencian people. All the people that live in the city, when they live for their houses, they have a garden at less of 5 minutes walking, at less of 300 meters. And now we are going to see four actions that are very important for us. Go to the other slide, and we can close with that to the actions. Yes. Well, we have four big actions related with the energy. This the power up is related with other three, and we want to put to use the space of our the main building, but the other buildings of the municipality, of the public buildings, to try to put solar to the solar, well, the photovoltaic, okay, panels in our roofs to try to use the energy for our buildings, but we use the 75% of this energy that we are obtaining for this use, but other 25 are related or are connected with the people that live close to us, and they have social problems, okay? And we want to use our energy to try to reduce their energy problems that they have, you know, for different kind of people that are living close to us in a radius of 2 kilometers. Where what kind of projects we have it? Well, I'm having some problems with the slides, as you can see. If you go 3 slides previously, one more. This, okay? As I said, the four axes more or less are the same, okay? As you can read here, the 75% we are using for our self-consumption of the buildings, but the other is to the allocated to the house halls that we have identified for social services. Okay, this action is very important because it's the hugest actions related with energy in Spain in a city, talking about a urban photovoltaic plant. We put solar panels in the cemeteries of Valencia. It's a space that we and the other cities usually don't use, at least here in Spain, but we know that in Europe is very usual too. And we have put solar panels in this building. And for that, we are obtaining the biggest photovoltaic plant in Spain and I think in Europe too. Okay, this energy, as I said, almost all their energy, not the 75, because the 70 is we don't need a lot of energy there, is transmit for social services, people that live close to this. And this project and the others that you can see in the presentation are talking more or less about the same. Try to use the energy that we are recovering in our city to for our self-consumption, but after to try to transmit for a social media. And with these actions are well, I wanted to finalize our time. I want to transmit that it's possible talk about the government of the city with all the usual services that we can have in a normal city, but talking to and connected with the sustainability things. I think that we have to do the before because the ONU Habitat is saying that in 2050 all the people will live close to the cities. We have to have a good quality of the cities, and we have to fight to obtain this fighting or using the tools of the innovation and the sustainability. And here you have four actions that could help to the energy problems that maybe we can have it, and to use or to solve this problem, connecting with the social services. That is very important for us too, and connected with the green spaces too.
Yeah.
And thanks for your attention.
Thank you so much, and I'm very sorry that you have such an interesting and rich presentation as well. I hope you can understand that in the interest of the other speakers, we have to unfortunately stop here. But I really hope, and of course, presentations will be shared, that there is going to be much more interest. So please stay online. Now, I'm not sure. I think in the interest of sort of switching EU-Japanese, I would like to invite Mr. Sakanishi from the city of Fukushima on the floor. Maybe just very quickly, I mean, I think the interesting part of that presentation maybe fits also well with the Valencian one, is that the prefecture is known for having this balanced combination of farming, commercial and manufacturing sectors. And Mr. Dr. Sakanishi is going to talk about, of course, renewable energy and hydrogen technology. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for the presentation. I am Sakanishi from Energy Agency Fukushima. As you know, in 2011 there was a Great Japan earthquake and the accident at the Fukushima nuclear power plant. After that, for 10 years in Fukushima Prefecture, well, actually, I'd like to talk about Fukushima Prefecture rather than Fukushima City. And actually, the population is a little less than 2 million. It's it's something over 1.9 million. But to break away from the nuclear power, the renewable implementation have progressed. EAF is the short for Energy Agency Fukushima. And with the support of the prefecture's industrial center, the EAF was established. And in 2012, there were 330 members in our working groups, but today, more than 1,000 members who are companies in manufacture. We are working with the different subgroups, including on the hydrogen. NRW is the province, say, in Germany. So the we actually learned from their model. And with regards to FREA, I'll touch upon later, so I'm not going to explain FREA at this moment. Next, in Fukushima, as I mentioned earlier, breaking away from the fossil fuel, it was also given importance to solar, wind, biomass, and hydrogen are being used. So realizing a hydrogen-based society is one of the objectives. Utilizing renewable energy, we are intending to make a sustainable energy society. There is a Fukushima's energy initiative, which is being supported by Agency for Reconstruction of the government, national government. So there have been many and large renewable energy facilities. So this is today's Fukushima Prefecture situation. This is not the power, but this is the primary energy. On a primary energy basis, 2 years ago, 52.1% was from renewable energy. Overall, nationwide, Japan, the rate is somewhere around 20%. So primary energy for adding a power and the heat and such, the renewable energy ratio is just 15% or some. When it comes to power, about 30% is generated by renewable energy. But in Fukushima Prefecture, already more than half of the primary energy is from renewable energy. In terms of power, 90% is from renewable energy. Why? Fukushima has many large-scale hydropower. So before the establishment of the nuclear power plant in Niigata and Fukushima, power was sent to Tokyo that was generated from a Inawashira lake. water. But after establishment of the renewable nuclear power plant in Fukushima and Niigata, the situation is different. But today, in terms of power, the nearly 100% is generated using renewable energy, and 70% 2030 and area 100% in 2040 are aimed at ahead of Japan as a whole. So renewable energy is implemented partially as a way to break away from nuclear. Now I'd like to talk also about hydrogen. This is a map produced by METI in Abukuma mountain area, utilizing transmission line from a Fukushima Daiichi number 1, number 2, with anticipation of a large scale of the more than 3 megawatt wind power. There is actually the construction underway to reach the 300 megawatt scale, utilizing the transmission line. The fuel for automotive, or the fuel for vessel, and sources for agriculture, for transportation, and heat are also in scope. Fukushima will experience a cold winter, so a lot of energy is required for heating. So we like to tackle all those, utilizing a heat in the ground, and also we are to utilize a geothermal, and we are to utilize all possible means to realize RE100. Next slide, please. So FRIA. I used to work for IGES, National Institute of the Advanced Industrial Science and Technology, AIST. At the FRIA is Fukushima Renewable Energy Institute under IGES. I used to work for IGES, AIST, and FRIA is a newly established institute in Koriyama City within the prefecture. Today, there are more than 200 personnel, and there are personnel who came from different parts of Japan to establish this renewable. And there is this electrolyzer. This is rather small in scale, but Truen, or the liquid hydrogen carrier, are being used, and this is diesel engine. So hydrogen is utilized for the co-fueling. Diesel and the hydrogen are used to achieve the carbon neutral. So this is the overall picture of Fukushima Prefecture. So the shape of Fukushima Prefecture is, I think, somehow similar to the shape of Australia, but we are a big prefecture. We are the third largest prefecture, excluding Hokkaido Prefecture, and we have rich nature. And as I mentioned earlier, there's much hydropower utilized. Geothermal is also used with many hot springs, and so natural energy are being used. And Toyota and Denso, those companies are now in prefecture. And in Namie, this is part of a NEDOS project. This is Fukushima Hydrogen Energy Research Field, having been established, working with private sector companies. And there are hydrogen stations in Iwaki City on the seaside, near the Pacific. And there is a FC bus, also H2 boiler. There are many components in the prefectural plan, so many players from different sectors are collaborating. And FCV as well. Last year, there are 369. There are more than 400 FCVs in prefecture, and there are 8 on-site green hydrogen stations aiming at more. So there are many hydrogen stations being established. IHI and there are other private companies cooperating with each other so that we can enjoy wider usage of hydrogen in the prefecture. This is about FH2R. Once again, this is Fukushima Hydrogen Energy Research Field. There's a big plant. We have a hydrogen station here, 20 megawatt solar capacity is there, and also there's a 10 megawatt electrolyzer being installed. And the hydrogen is transported for the usage at convenience stores, schools, and such. FCV, like Mirai or Toyota or Honda, they don't give us enough demand. So currently, we're also aiming at application of hydrogen at the trucks and other larger vehicles as well for the FCV. An energy management system is there during the daytime, especially in spring and autumn. There's no usage of the air conditioning, so there'll be a excessive or there is a excessive demand, and sometimes there is a request for a control or of the generation in Kyushu and such. But in Fukushima, we're using excessive power to create hydrogen so that can be used in winter and summer. Next slide. This is the overall picture. Asahi Kasei is using as an electrolyzer manufacturer, and Toshiba is an operator. They are working together. And if you have opportunity, please do visit here. This is in the Namie City. This is close to the Fukushima Daiichi. Reconstruction work is underway, so if you have opportunity, please come and visit. These are the photos of the different view in prefecture. There are many beautiful sceneries in the prefecture in all the seasons, so please do enjoy the sightseeing as well. Thank you.
Oh, it's fantastic. I would like to really have much more time. I know that's always the challenge, particularly of the last session of the day. So I don't know if Mr. Carlson now is available and accessible. Okay, thank you so much.
Yes,
fantastic. So, Mr. Carlson, I already introduced you, but then we lost you. So you might go ahead and try to be concise and brief, because unfortunately, time is running out. So, but we are all eager to learn from Omiya Energy, please.
Okay. Yeah, good morning, everybody. I'm sorry about the technical issues, so I will do this brief. I work for the utility of Umeå Energy, it's called, and the city of Umeå is sited in the far north of Europe, as you can see on the map here. Still, we have fairly warm summers and cold winters, so we need to have energy solutions that can meet the demands of the population. We also have a fairly high climate impact per capita due to our location in Europe, in the world. And next slide, please. So the decisions makers of Umeå has come to a decision to follow the Paris Agreement to mitigate the CO2 emissions by being climate neutral by 2030, and the whole region. Sorry, you need to back one slide, please. Oh, thank you. Yes, and the whole region by 2040. And this put, now you need to back up, please. There, this stay here for a second. So anyway, put demand on our utility company to meet these new demands. So we need to find ways how to reduce the CO2 emissions from our production plants. So, and what we're doing right now is we're going to produce e-methanol from carbon dioxide instead of emitting to the air. And this is for use in the maritime and the aviation industries. Next slide, please. Now you can change. Thank you. So, yes, this is our plants we have up in Umeå Eco Industrial Park, it's called. And we are right now building the methanol production plant, or about to build. Anyway, this we have CH combined heat and power plants. We use biomass and recycle solid waste, produce heating and electricity for windmill, and they will also be connected to the methanol production. So we use this carbon dioxide from the CHPs to produce methanol, and so we will produce around 130,000 tons of e-methanol annually. The city of Umeå is practically a whole heated from us, from the district heating systems. So we have about 99% of the heating used for heating purposes is renewable. And by this e-methanol production, we will also help the mobility, like aviation and medicine, to make the green transition. Next slide, please. Yeah, this is a final one. This is an kind of a vision of the new eco-industrial park we are developing. We will use green circular economy as a sort of a template for the whole area. We will focus on recovering nutrients from sludge, heating and energy from solid waste, produce e-methanol, produce hydrogen, and we will also do advanced landfill technologies, leachate treatment plants, and so forth. So that's about it, I guess. Thank you for listening.
Okay, so that was a run through 2 European cities, 2 Japanese cities, and I think we heard a lot about the very obviously localized efforts to improve energy efficiency and promote renewable energy at various scales. We're almost running out of time, but I think we might have at least one question for all panelists. But I would also like to invite you, who might have heard what the others are saying, first of all, where, if you have an immediate comment, where do you see synergies? Because ultimately, this event is not only hearing and learning, but it's also connecting. It's of course not so easy hybrid, but still I think it's interesting to know where are commonalities and interesting pathways and practices. So if here to my colleagues here on the panel, yes, please, if you have an immediate comment, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. I'm Sakanishi. So we heard the presentation from Umeo. My question is to Carlson-san. I've been to the city 15 years ago. My specialty is in biofuel. At the time, Chemlec was the company there, not methanol, but the dimethyl ether was generated 15 years ago. And there was idea to use it for the biofuel or the liquefied petroleum gas application worked on at the time. But today, it was changed to e-methanol, dimethyl ether, or green propane gas. What are the progress with those areas rather than e-methanol? Were you able to hear?
Thank you very much for the question. It's technical, but I think that's really also the purpose of this exchange. So, Mr. Carlson, if you have a very short answer for that one, we would appreciate. He's gone? Oh, I'm very sorry. So we have to keep that question and communicate this to him. All right, do we still have Valencia with us? The city of Valencia? Yes. So is there anything that the 3 remaining panelists would like to comment on, or can I continue with maybe one last question to all of you? If there's no one raising the hands, I don't see, of course, Valencia. So let me maybe pick up one item that I figured out in all presentations. And it relates also to what the mayor of Yokohama said with regards to, in this case of Yokohama, of the big challenge that is to actually engage the local SMEs. The local SMEs in this whole energy system transformation and decarbonization matter. What now Mr. Carson has left, but we know that in the EU, not only in Sweden, there are a lot of incentive schemes to promote the skilling of staffing and also to promote new joint venture startups coming up in this scheme. There is public funding, pricing mechanisms, and so on and so forth. What do you think, I mean, is in this space in Japan currently happening, or what should happen so that you can actually get more local SME chain, please?
Well, thank you very much. In regards to the engagement of SMEs, I believe that this is such an important question. First of all, many SMEs don't really have an ownership when it comes to this decarbonization issue. So the city demonstrates leadership to share the current realities and the situations of the world, and doing such sharing activities is important. And also subsidies to introduce renewables may be available from the city side, and for example, we can always ask local companies to be part of the construction work. In so doing, I believe it's a good idea to engage local SMEs.
This is Sakanishi. As I mentioned earlier, in Fukushima Prefecture, what we see is that like Mitsubishi, Hitachi, IHI, those not just those major companies, but like smaller local companies, for example, those companies which were not creating a solar module before, there are local SMEs who started working on producing something related to renewable energy. Some of them started working on making parts for electrolyzer. So local SMEs started getting involved in manufacturing facilities for renewable energy power generation and such. So those changes have started. So we are supporting those changes. We are providing technical support, and we're getting support from large companies. And so the matching is another thing that we see as important.
Thank you very much. Now I just have to get some help from the moderators. Maybe my clock stopped. Are we on time, or do we still have more time? I don't know. Okay, 1-2 minutes, because yeah, I have not a modern watch, so actually my clock has stopped. So 1 or 2 more minutes before we wrap up this session. So I think that's an important takeaway that maybe also is something that needs to be explored further in the dialogue between also EU, Japan, but also the many global networks that I understand have been focusing more on the city governance levels, let's say, and not much extended to other sort of stakeholder groups, including, let's say, the SMEs and the citizens. So it's going to be crowded and complex. I think I saw a couple of schemes in the presentations today where you already showed how integrated you go forward with the planning that is necessary, but I think equally also necessary for the monitoring and the implementation to stay connected. So the challenges certainly are not small. I think probably I have to stop here looking at Yatsuka. So let me thank first of all of you here for coming. I think it's really adding value. I really hope that there is a continuation. Of course, from our side, we certainly will continue to working with IGES, whom I would really heartfully thank for the excellent support for this entire event that tomorrow, of course, continues, where we also talk about local stakeholder participation, and hand over to you, Yatsuka. Thank you so much, and also colleague from Valencia.
どうもありがとうございました。スピーカーの皆様、どうもありがとうございま
Thank
し
you
た。
very much to all the speakers. So please leave the stage.
それでは
Now we'd like to move on to the final wrap-up session. So we have an online participant, Ms. Diana Aconcia, Director, International Affairs and Climate Finance at Directorate General for Climate Action, who is joining us online. Over to you. Please deliver your remarks.
Hello and good afternoon, everybody. First of all, can you hear me, see me? I hope. Okay.
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Perfect. I'm happy that this worked out. So, again, good afternoon, everyone. Hello from Brussels. And I apologize in advance because I have a cold, so I might be interrupted by some coughing. But so let me start, first of all, by thanking the Honorable Mayor of Yokohama, Mr. Yamanaka, for his generosity hosting this event, once again showing the engagement with the EU after kindly hosting my team and myself in Yokohama last February. His personal engagement and leadership is the best example on how important the role of local authorities and cities is fighting climate change. I also want to thank State Minister Yagi. I see his participation in today's event as a reflection of the Japanese government's commitment to the EU-Japan collaboration on this important issue, and also on the importance of our EU-Japan Green Alliance more broadly. I would also like to thank all participants from Japan and the EU side who share their experience and solutions on renewable energy and energy efficiency today. We need those concrete examples of what can be achieved on the ground to drive change across the society and at all levels of governance. Ladies and gentlemen, you are aware that the climate crisis is intensifying even faster than expected. The only way to keep our planet safe for humanity is to drastically reduce global greenhouse gas emissions. To succeed, all countries and major economies, including the European Union and Japan in particular, should speed up their emission reductions by 2030 by urgently putting in place the right policies. Science tells us that we must act in this decade to have any chance of reaching climate neutrality by 2050. While central governments have a crucial role in setting the direction of travel, all levels of government must be involved, each within its domain of competencies. The European Union is a telling example of this, with the headline targets and the legislative framework established at EU level, but where a lot of the action, as well as the funding, happens in the member states and locally. In the EU, the direction of travel is very clear. The European Green Deal, that was launched in 2019, set in motion the transformation of our society and economy into a modern, resource-efficient, climate-neutral and competitive economy, which addresses climate and environmental risks. And the European Climate Law sets binding targets for the European Union to become climate neutral by 2050 and to reduce net greenhouse gas emissions by at least 55% by 2020 compared to 1990s. But, ladies and gentlemen, cities is where 70% of global emissions happen. But they are also the places where solutions can be experimented and scaled up for transport, heating and cooling, innovative urban planning and materials. The cities in Europe and in Japan have been at the forefront of climate action, and it is very encouraging to see how local level actors in the EU and Japan can lead the way towards faster emissions reduction and greater resilience. I strongly believe that we need to make the voice and experience of cities and local communities more prominent as we are stepping up our efforts towards climate neutrality. Those efforts at local level are supported by central government. Today we have heard how both the EU and Japan are supporting local government efforts to raise their ambition and promote local climate actions to achieve zero carbon emission goals by 2050. The EU, through its so-called 100 cities mission, is supporting 100 smart and carbon neutral cities in European regions And it is expected that more cities will follow their example and pursue carbon neutrality by 2050. While in Japan, the government supports the creation of at least 100 decarbonized regions by 2040. So there is a strong similarity, communality of objectives here. Today's discussion is one of the many activities organized in the framework of the European Union-Japan Green Alliance that we established nearly 3 years ago and is now intensifying cooperation on all climate, energy, and environmental issues. And while the Green Alliance was established between the Japanese government and the EU, it is not only a matter for central government, and given the success of today's and previous events on city level action, we will continue to jointly support these exchanges. Our cooperation, however, needs to extend further. The European Union and Japan have the huge challenge of transforming highly industrialized economies that build less on the use of fossil fuels and depend on natural resources into carbon neutral, climate resilient, and resource efficient societies. And as I said before, we had the Green Deal in the European Union, and you have the IGES, the green transformation in Japan, and we are sharing the same objectives. And we also want this new economic model to promote prosperity and create jobs, to improve quality of life of our citizens and leave no one behind. To achieve this, we cannot act only from the central government. We need to involve businesses, think tanks, academia, and we need to share research and exchange technology and best practices. So all levels of government, business, civil society, all together towards the same objective. And in a world which is increasingly fractured, where cooperation is no longer the norm, and not all towers play by the rules, the European Union and Japan must provide an example of cooperation at all levels for the well-being of our population. So to close, thank you very much for having given the opportunity to say a few words in this event. I wish you a very successful second day of discussion tomorrow, and I'm looking forward to further engaging with you on this highly important topic through our Green Alliance and beyond. And have a nice evening.
どうも、アコンシア様どうもありがとうございました。
Thank you very much, Ms. Akoncia.
それではこれで本当に最後になります。
So at the very least, we are to hear from Managing Director of IGES, Tsuyoshi Kakami, for his final remarks. And IGES is the host.
Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, on behalf of IGES, co-organizer of this workshop, is EU and Yokohama City. We'd like to thank all the participants to this workshop. Today, following welcome remark of Mayor of Yokohama, we had an opening remarks by EU Ambassador Paquette and State Minister Yagi from the Ministry of the Environment, Japan. It not only honored us, but also we are very much encouraged by the recognition that climate action at subnational level is high on the political agenda, and so steady progress in both EU and Japan. Followed by a keynote speech by Dr. Yamanaka, Mayor of Yokohama City, and Mr. Croquette from City of Paris, Mr. Doucet, Mayor of Lyon, and Mr. Holtzman, Vice Mayor, City of Frankfurt. It set a scene of how those well-known cities tackling the issue of climate change with the eminent leadership shown by these top policy makers and its supporting administrations. And Mr. Fasord from European Commission and Mr. Izumi from Ministry of Environment Japan appropriately described the progress of the EU and Japan initiative to accelerate climate action at local and regional level. It was quite inspiring and helped us to understand these advanced policies in a comparative manner. For the topic 1, energy efficiency and promotion of renewable energy at local level, we had a very much informative presentation by Mr. Murakami from City of Kyushu and Mr. Selder of Valencia City and Mr. Sakanishi from Fukushima Energy Agency and Mr. Carlson from Umeå, Sweden. It provided us with many concrete examples and even pragmatic information, which often give us clue to overcome the difficulty. Again, it reminds us with the importance of this workshop to exchange views and actual experiences. And last but not least, these sessions became quite lively and inspiring when, thanks to excellent MC and moderators, namely Ms. Kataoka, Mr. Uchida, and Ms. Wagner. We are grateful that EU and EU Climate Dialogue gave us opportunity to co-organize such a relevant workshop together with Yokohama City as well as MOEJ. We are very much keen on contributing EU-Japan Green Alliance, which we will make every effort for its success. I understand we'll make interesting topics tomorrow, and this workshop to be really fruitful for cities, citizens, business entities, or policymakers in EU and Japan. Thank you very much. See you again.
どうもありがとうございました。それではこれで
Thank you very much. This close the day one of the EU-Japan Subnational Climate Action Workshop. Thank you very much for your participation. And tomorrow, there'll be a day two in the online format. I appreciate your participation tomorrow. Thank you very much.